How you doing? Ava, I can't even see your mom. Oh my goodness. Ava, you've got the best. Look at Kaylin. You got all friends? Your mom's gonna get a big one.
Mix it with that melon rock. It hurt.
Nana, come fall. Andrea, you need to be over here too with us.
I don't know how.
Mom taught me how to fly. That's not the name of the video. It's Kaylee. I watched an adult thing on how to vlog, like a. Over. And then think about doing the right leg. Is she doing it? Left leg. And then right leg. Alright, let's stop. It's all about just the arm. Just the arm. Okay. You do the arm. Look at Kaylee goes like this. And then the other side. Alright. And the other side. She's got it. Alright, let's try it. All the girls are doing it. Everybody look up. Andrew. Everybody look at Andrea.
How about Granddaddy going to sit by Nana?
Can you sit right there, Granddaddy?
Go sit right there by Nana.
I don't see enough room.
Here.
Here, Kaylin. Everybody look right here. Okay, that's good. Just like that. There we go. Okay. Oh, good. Perfect, Ava. All right. Look at Teddy. I'm so proud of you guys. No, stay down. Sit down so we can see Ava, baby. Sit your bottom. Sit your bottom. Come on now. Scoot down. There we go. One. Everybody look up here. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Look right here. Cheese. Wyatt. Good smile. Cheese. Good job. That was so good. You're right. You're right.
Right then, yeah, we're right. Keep going. Keep going.
And we still got Langdale money.
House step.
Good. Right there. He's good.
All right. That's good.
Come on. I got Andrea. We'll scooch it on in here, baby. Oh, you do?
All right. Why didn't you see the camera? And you can back.
It'd be a lot easier if I just did this instead of moving everybody.
Is John Everett standing like right up front? Just sit. Why don't you sit right there? You come sit in front of Trista. Come stand in front of Trista. Here, where your spot.
Oh, good.
Everybody, come on. All right, one picture.
Everybody look at the phone. All right, 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
Look, look.
Smile at the camera.
Alright.
I could have got out of the selfie stick.
Let's do one more.
Okay. Watch that.
All right, look at the
3 seconds.
look and smile.
2.
Alright, that's it.
That was fast.
Thanks. That was awesome.
That was good.
Taking pictures.
Very nice.
Oh, you're cute.
I'm glad.
It's like a first. That's all it takes for them to smile. Couldn't get there. Had to go back out here.
They're just
And so all week this week, they got here like training, showing people how to get it, because they're doing. But it's still not even open yet. Ava, do you want they've been showing them because, like, that's not good that they.
What you got, Granddaddy?
Yes, they've never been there.
Shoes.
New shoes.
I mean,
Flip,
there she's on, like,
flip on.
she even, she put them in like, that she, you know what I mean, like, that just kind of thinks that, like, they got, I mean, it took about 5 extra minutes to get there because they had to go this way. And they came back out to where Scintilla is, came out around the perimeter and went in that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
They good? Good. All right. Well, I guess in the winter, you put something on it.
But our friends that were on that tour said
Yeah,
she felt they don't know how to she was kind of like, but it was like, her body was like done. This is Davis. A very, very small. Very small.
It's a 10.
Yeah. Are y'all sitting at the bar there? Okay.
Y'all pick those out.
Here, come sit down. You gotta help. Where's yours, Sarah?
Well, I'll let you wear them, hey.
Hey,
All right.
if they'd have been an inch longer, he could.
Eat your cake.
Kaylin, if you wanna eat a piece of cake, you go sit with Ava. Put that down. Hey, Kaylin, put that down. You're about to step on the iPad. No, Kaylin, step over the iPad, baby. Either, yeah, go open the card first. No. We're not gonna take it. Leave it right there. Okay,
Granddaddy.
putting it down. Thank you. I appreciate your help.
Listen, we have to sit up and not make
Me and her on Me and her.
Celebrating you, Grandpa.
They don't have a granddaddy card.
Man, I do what I need right now.
What is that?
Red Lobster.
Oh,
Your favorite. Let's go right now, Granddaddy.
I can take all this crew right now. I don't think we wouldn't could be covered. All right. Since it's your birthday, it's time to call out the great things you do and what you're all about. The help you contribute, the time you devote, the wisdom you shared, we can practically quote. The lovable guy that you always will be for all that you mean to your whole family. Happy 90th birthday, Granddaddy. We love you so much. Love, Jake, Tara, John, Everett, and Trudy.
all right.
Thank you so much. I tell you what, that'll come in handy at a later time.
Mama, we passed it. Mama, that card right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we all forgot about Red Lobster, but that
Mama, that card right there, the gold one, goes with his slippers.
Okay.
all right.
There's a few little things back in there too.
In this?
Well, wait, I ain't.
Oh, yeah, you can open this. Sorry.
I mean, it's just a little something to go along with that.
Man, I didn't know they made so many. 90 years young. Well, 90 years young. I better have to latch on to that. 90 days young, every wish, every candle, every piece of cake.
I felt like they're coming back.
Happy birthday cheer. They're all in honor of wonderful youth. Happy 90th birthday, Daddy. Love, Melanie, and Terry. And we got a handwritten note on it. You are such a wonderful dad and granddad. Thank you for the role model you are to our family. We have learned from you many things, but the most important ones are our salvation through Christ Jesus, our love for learning and love for family. We hope this is the best birthday ever until you are 100. That's a long goal. I'm not sure I can manage that long. But I will try. Good Lord in heaven.
That's for your candy drawer.
That cuts out a couple of those.
That'll add years to your life.
I thought it was gummies or whatever.
I thought they liked those for the candy dish.
How did you get that from garbage?
And peppermints, they were sitting on the counter. I was like,
Keep the
somebody.
little candy in their drawer, and if they ask me to go by and pick up something, or leave the paper or something, I always know I can go to the drawer, and that's my pay over there. I say, well, you paid me.
I used to leave good chocolates in there, but
Did you ask
since
her?
the
I
Howard
said, no.
died,
I said, she told me that's what it's for.
that's right, that's right.
Man, I like both of them, man.
Good.
Daddy, when you were in the 80s, like Nonna, you were an Oxford
Genarian.
generic. So do you know what you are now?
Nova near.
Close. It's close. Shelley looked it up.
Nona Genarian.
Nona.
Nona.
N-O-N-A.
Nona Genarian.
I thought it was nonagenarian.
That'd be close.
Nona Genarian. Nona Genarian.
That's real close.
N-O-N-A. Nona.
Nona.
Nona Genarian.
See, a nonagenarian.
Yeah.
That's what Nonna said.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a smart one.
My mama didn't create no food.
My mama what?
Didn't create
But the only 90th birthday I remember going to was Aunt Virginia's. And it was Melanie. And she was so jovial and all that. And she was always such an inspiration. And I think sometimes when I'm grumbling and things, I think, man, everything I grumble about, I don't know why we do grumble. Sometimes I do. Ask the Lord to forgive me.
We all do, Granddaddy. I was grumbling earlier tonight with the kids. And so now I just sat down and I said, I'm not going to worry about it. I figure the neighbors will tell me if they go over there.
Well, you know, it really just struck me the other day when I just seeing all my family sitting around. I thought, man, if I'd have never got married, I mean, that was a choice. And I chose to get married, and we chose each other. But years before, when I was a teenager, I deliberately prayed. I said, God, if you want me to be a preacher, which I had already committed to this call, I said, I want you to help me find the mate that you would help me to. And then he said during the 13 years she was praying for God to lead her to him. And so it so happened that in the times in which we live, we didn't have the opportunity to actually date, you know. I was committed in school. I had no car. I had to depend on other people to get me to and fro. So she'd always volunteer her parents to take me to the so,
Did you know that's why you were trying to hook him?
I don't think it was deliberate, but it was a good way to help out.
They were generous.
Cordial.
Okay, that's a good little drive too, right? Especially back then.
So y'all didn't find each other on the internet, or you went
Is it in Harmony? Years later.
It was Vacation Bible School.
Oh my word.
No,
If that would have happened, Granddaddy might have been with somebody else because Nana got on the internet after Granddaddy. Several years after Granddaddy.
That's right. But she's there now.
She's there. She stalks everybody on Facebook. But she won't post anything, so you don't know that she's looking. But she'll say, I saw you on the ice cream truck.
I'm afraid I might put it on somebody else's.
like button on it.
Yeah, we like to know that you came by the Facebook wall.
Did you get my likes?
Not really. See, I feel like you like her a silent.
You do the likes?
I thought you were a silent stalker.
On some of the pictures now.
Mimi's a silent stalker too, and then all of a sudden she'll like everything. I've never heard that word. She hasn't, and all of a sudden she'll like everything
Like a
all at
shotgun.
once, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, she gets it on Facebook.
I liked something of yours, like yesterday, and it was like 3 weeks old. She's gonna know that.
I like everything I see in everyone.
Yeah.
And I sometimes worry, like I'll see people that like I haven't talked to in 10 years, but I like everything they post.
Yeah.
I'm like, she probably thinks I'm stalking her. And I'm not, she just pops up in my feed every time. You know?
How do you know who likes what? You have 387 people like everything.
That's true.
There's notifications when somebody likes something. But my mother-in-law is probably one of the first people. I posted our little floss thing, not in the video, but just a few little snapshots. I bet she's already liked it. She likes immediately. That's cute.
I already like it.
And Granddaddy got some wishes from Facebook.
Is Granddaddy on Facebook?
No, I just put his picture out
We
there.
gotta read him.
Oh, it's like, I haven't seen you.
Right here.
All right, let's get back. I want to ask this couple something. What was y'all's most intense argument about?
Probably money.
Disagreement, or you had to come to the meeting of mind.
It was.
I know. After you had Melanie, you had to decide whether you want to have any more.
It took them a while.
We thought we weren't going to have any more, because they're 5 years
Wait, no, Sprite.
difference in the pressure.
Let's just do water, okay? I think we've had enough.
I'm glad you did.
So y'all never argued then?
That, right? That's awesome.
Well,
Or
You just,
we haven't had a whole lot of
They really
arguments.
haven't.
We usually talk about things and then
There you go.
say, what,
You trying to
we're gonna
create
do
an
this, do
argument.
that, and we decide. That's it. It's settled.
Terry and I were talking about other night. We don't argue very much, really. You know?
Can you guard
It's just-
it?
no, I just say yes, ma'am. We don't bother with it.
But we really haven't argued very much through our marriage, you know? I've gotten puffy a few times, but he knows what I'm
That's the Wilson side.
But when we got married,
You haven't got to bed angry.
That's right, you should never go to bed angry.
we were serious about our commitment. We both agreed that we were making a lifetime commitment, and as long as we lived, that we would be together. And 69 years it will be in December.
Why are you back in?
We still hadn't broke up. And we don't plan to.
There's no arguing when you're a nonagenarian.
Not a generic. I like that.
But it's so funny that we've lived together so long that we can be talking and one of us will interrupt and finish out what the other was saying. We almost know what they're gonna say. But if you have these little games where you're gonna put one in one room and one in the other and ask me a question and I answer it. Then you bring her in and ask her the question, how I would respond. We always miss it. I think, well, I know what she'd say. And doggone if whatever I say, hers is different. Never get it right.
That's funny, though. That's a funny game.
That is fun.
It is. We should have done that tonight.
Where,
That would have been fun. Next time.
where did y'all go on your honeymoon?
To Florida, we went to Panama City. No, we stopped on the way. We were going on our way to Panama City, but we stopped in Tallahassee.
No.
Say this is their family birthday.
Okay, maybe it was.
We didn't get to Panama City. No. We left the time we got through at the church that night, and it was started raining on us, and we were in rain when we left. So we were trying to get to a place. Tallahassee was the nearest place you could find a place to spend the night. So that's where we stopped, and then next morning we went on to Panama City. And the one thing I regret, I asked her to marry me before she actually ever met my folks. She never met my family before we got married, and I regret that because that wasn't really fair to her to marry somebody that she didn't know anything about my family. But she took it on faith and went. And my family loved her and she loved them, and she fitted right in. But that was a big chance to take, and she was willing to do that, and I appreciate it.
So Corey said the same thing today.
So how long were y'all married before she met your family?
Oh, we on our honeymoon, we headed from Panama City. We took the coastal route in Mobile.
So they weren't at y'all's wedding?
Mm-hmm.
None of your family? Really? Did y'all elope?
I got that picture.
I
No, we didn't elope. We
At
just.
Harmony, where.
I'm saying, how long were y'all engaged? Like when you
Not
asked
very
her?
long.
You didn't see the picture today?
I didn't see any pictures today.
Got a picture of the wedding.
Well, I mean, I've seen a picture of their wedding, but I didn't know how long from when he asked till they got
Oh,
married.
yeah, he proposed at Jekyll Island though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that?
That's right, because that's why the anniversary was
We
there.
were over
From
there
Jekyll Island, how long did y'all get married in
in December.
Like
And that
November
was
to
probably
December?
November.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanksgiving.
1 month.
A month?
A month.
A month?
We had to make it fit in with Christmas break. I had time off from school, and so that was the time we could get married.
So did you ask her father permission to marry?
No, I regret that. Because there was a guy that worked for him, and he just kept pushing me to, you gotta ask her daddy. And I thought, well, she's already asked her daddy if that's all right, and he agreed, and so I didn't ask him. And I regret that. I mean, but I don't know that I ever had any of my son-in-laws ask for me.
I was afraid what you'd say.
But to me, I guess I just didn't understand some things that I understand now. I mean, to give your daughter up to just belong to somebody else, that's a pretty hard thing to do, and especially if your daughter marries somebody who mistreats them and all. Then, I mean, all these years you spent, helping your daughter to grow up, and then her get abused and all. But then you don't know how a husband's gonna treat a wife, and so that's the reason that I always felt like that before either boy or girl marry, you need to give some thought to that. I've had a few say, well, I didn't marry the whole family. Yes, you did. You married the whole family.
Sorry.
I actually married Terry's family before I married him. They helped him to know that he married me.
I married Donna's Cooking, that's what I married. Well, I want to officially say, is it okay if I had married your daughter? Okay. All right, I'm good, y'all. I'm good.
We can never say he's never asked.
They need to renew their vows. They accept. They accept, yes. Let's renew the vows now that we've got the formal.
Speaking of which, Joey came over to talk to us before he asked Trista, and he sat down at our table, and he was talking about something, and then he was quite nervous, and I was like, what is
He was coming to landscape, or he was going
gonna
to
do
landscape y'all's yard or something, right?
No, you kind of play guitar.
Guitar. No, that's when you were teaching him guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and they looked really nervous, and I was like, what is wrong?
Jake and Joey, not
And
where they
first
you
thing I know, he was saying, I just want to know if I can marry your daughter Tristan. And I went, what? I mean, it was just like, I wasn't even.
We're here to cut my grass.
And so I said,
I was completely shocked that I got engaged. The first thing I said was, do my parents know? Because I'm thinking, I'm about to get in trouble. Or like, I was way too young. I hadn't even started school yet.
I said, you were in school.
I mean, I had started hygiene. I was about to start hygiene
Yeah,
school. But we were engaged for a year and a half.
Years, and he said, we're planning to wait 2 years until she finishes. I said, oh, okay. I was like, right now? I said, I really want her to finish school. He said, yeah, we're planning to wait till she finishes. And so I said, oh, yes.
So when you got married, that was the second wedding you'd been to? You said you did one with your roommate, a room friend that you'd never been to a wedding before.
I think
I may have done
Nathaniel and Rachel, they got married just before.
Somebody else.
So I think I had done another wedding.
Oh, you were a professional by then, weren't you?
But it was only one other.
Yeah.
Before we got married.
Wow. Tell about the preacher.
Yeah, who married you? That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, Preacher Dunnigan was the one that he was an area missionary, and he actually was the one who arranged for me to come to that county because I was working through the state. Miss Susie Eubank was the lady in charge, and so I just volunteered to do whatever I could during the summer, and that meant working with Bible schools. So he asked for me to be assigned to his county, and with the idea that we would have a Bible school in every church in his county, which was about 30 churches during that summer. And so in order to cover them, we'd go in the morning I'd go to one church and he'd go to another one for that week. And then we'd go to another one in the afternoon. So we actually, within the summer, we offered to serve any church that needed help. And so I'm not sure, I don't feel like we covered everyone. We covered everyone who requested us to. And so that just happened to be one of the churches that I was assigned to. And it just shows how the Lord works, that I could have been assigned to any of the other churches and not have even met her.
Right.
Sorry.
But because I was in Bible school, then the church eventually called me then. So that gave me an opportunity for the church to call me.
See, I wasn't but 16 then. Because you couldn't.
Had to wait for her to get of age.
So we knew each other about 3 years before we got married.
I wish I
And
could
at
find my
school-
phone because this girl that I worked with said, your granddaddy, I recognize him. And I said, it's Dexter Wilson, she's from Tipton. And she said that you would come and speak often at their church in Ashford. I can't remember, it's on my phone, I can't find it. But her grandmother or somebody's Judy, and they said there's two ladies with the same names, but you would remember, I think she played the piano or something. Judy.
At a church in Ashburn.
Oh, what's it?
Judy, she lived out Whitehead.
Yeah, that's Allison Whitehead. That's her
Wow.
maiden name. But she said I knew we were destined to be friends because we've been friends for a long time.
I filled in almost a year supply at First Baptist, which they jokingly said, hey, we just called you to be our pastor. I was filling in every Sunday there for several months. And I said, well, back when I needed it, y'all couldn't call me because I hadn't been to seminary.
Right.
And I said, I still hadn't been to seminary. But we did attempt to go to seminary. I went to Louisville, Kentucky and signed in. And in '54, we were going to, I was trying to make a decision between whether the Lord wanted me to just be full-time in the pastorate or if I was to still be bivocational. And so the pastor at First Baptist and I were taking summer courses at the seminary. And we leave on Monday morning and get there during the day on Monday. Well, we'd have classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday till noontime. And so we went with the idea that we're just going to spend this month up there and not come home. Well, the very first week we were up there, a member of his church died, and we were in my car for that week. And so he had to come home for the funeral, but he didn't want to just drive my car. And so I said, well, we both just go home. So we went home, he had the funeral, and we went to our churches on Sunday. Got up, and we drove straight through from Ashburn to Louisville. Each time it was just one officer drive till we got tired, and the other one to take over. And so it took us about 12 hours, and it was rough.
Before the interstate system.
Yeah. So I couldn't really put my mind on my studies. I'd be so tired when I'd get back up there. We weren't really applying ourselves. Neither one of us made very good grades during that time. And then I found out, some of them said, man, if you ever get a church up here, said, if you get sick or something and you miss a Sunday, said the next guy come along and tell him, well, he's not coming back, said, and they'll call him. I said, man, I can't believe you just tell a lie about something like that. And so,
And be a preacher.
it was really difficult to get jobs right around because there were so many available. A lot of the seminary people were going 250, 300 miles on weekend just to do fill-in work. And I came back, I told Jenny, I said, I don't think God's calling me to do that. I said, I think He wants me to just do what we're doing. That summer I was working as a volunteer to take a census of Ashburn community and see how many people were available for a new church, which at that time First Baptist was sort of the elite, you know. They didn't really care about the ones on the other side of the track, and it was literally true. It was divided just half and half. And so a lot of those folks didn't feel welcome at First Baptist. And so we had prayed about it, and our association determined that there was a need in the community. We found around 150 Baptists living right there who were members of churches in the area who just weren't going to church anywhere. And we asked them if we created a new church, would they be interested in coming? Oh yes, we'd love to. So we got a big tent, and one of the men in the community had a vacant lot, and we set the tent up there, and we had a kind of a revival, and the different preachers in the county would come, and like each night we'd have a different pastor who would volunteer to preach, and we had people then coming to want to join if the church were organized. And so eventually about 3 weeks went by, and by that time we had enough interest that they wanted to organize a Baptist church. And of course I had never organized a church, and I wasn't really in charge at that point, but we were just working with other preachers. And so when they met, then they said, we want to call Preacher Wilson as our pastor. Well, if I went to seminary, I couldn't do that. And so we agreed to take the church, and they were small enough that I could still teach school, which I was already doing in Ashburn. And so during that time, I was teaching and pastoring a new church. And we pastored there from 54 to 58. 54. It's 5 years. Well, to Ashburn. But it's a 5-year period anyway. And we organized the church, and I baptized more people during the time I was there than any church I ever was in. It was, and we'd have to go to Pond to baptize Preacher Moore, who had been her pastor out at Harmony before I went. He was the one who wrote "Where We'll Never Grow Old," "Ring Those Golden Bells." He was the songwriter of those songs, and so she was very familiar with his music, and so he had a pond, and we went to the pond for baptizing, and that was some of the most productive years of my life, and the church was active. In fact, it grew so much that I felt like that I needed to remove myself for them to get a pastor who could be a full-time pastor there. And so then I got a call to a church over near Augusta, a little church called Blythe Baptist Church. It was about 20 miles out of Augusta. And so we up and moved to Blythe. And we left the church, and of course.
Well, how old were the kids?
Well, Tim was born during that time.
55 there.
In Augusta?
And Bevo was in Blythe, right?
Melanie was born in.
I was born in Sylvester.
Tim in Ashburn. Then we went on to Blythe, and Bebo was born there while we were at Blythe. And Bebo had a birth problem. The blood, my blood was positive and hers was negative, and so we had a problem there. But before they even told us, Jeannie just said, well, you know, he just looked so dark looking, said something's wrong. And the doctor said, well, we have changed the blood, we've done what you're supposed to do to take care. And so he never had any problems from it, but we thought about, had we been in Ashburn or Sylvester and this occurred, he might not have made it because we might not have had the proper care. So we felt like God sent us there because that was a very unproductive church for me. I ran into a situation where the chairman of deacons and the general community had a kind of a animosity toward the base. It was a not Air Force. Army. It was an Army base there at Fort Gordon, and I was concerned as a person in a little established community where you just about reached the people you could reach. I said, well, why aren't we reaching the military? They said, well, we don't especially want them in our church.
There were a lot of Puerto Ricans in the military because I was in the second grade there, and there were a lot of Puerto Rican students. But Tim and I, we learned how to charge when we lived there. We lived next to a store, and so we would go, and Tim said, oh, Coke. I said, me too. And so we'd go to the store, and Tim says, charge it to Dexter Wilson.
And I mean, he was
He was little. I let him just talk it because he knew how to get it.
I'm sure you taught me.
But he got us a Coke.
We've been charging ever since.
Look how far you've come.
well.
Where's your purse? We're tired.
Yeah, I bet they are. I bet you are. I'm so glad you came.
Sorry we couldn't stay long, but we'll come back.
Well, you're not going home.
We're going home. Well, we're going home tomorrow, though. But yeah, tomorrow morning.
Y'all gonna go home
early.
Well, we're so